Today's scripture reading comes from Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 to 14. You can follow along in the bulletin or on the screen. This is Jesus speaking, and we're still in his famous Sermon on the Mount. And he says, "Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks it will be opened." So, which one of you, if his son asks him for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a serpent? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father, who is in heaven, give good things to those who ask him? So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the way is easy that leads to destruction. And those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow, and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few.
All right, I would like to give a very warm welcome to all of you out there. Out there, I mean really out there. I'm one of the older guys who remembers radio. And those of you who are here, you missed out on kind of the golden age of radio as far as the CBC is concerned. There were just a tremendous lineup of amazing hosts. So way back, and I'm going to be referring to this quite a bit because I moved into my senior years and I'm quite nostalgic about my early years. And so, as a young high school student in the 70s, there was a personality on CBC radio. His name was Alan McPhee. And he had a weekly show in the evening. So you're in your little room and you finish your homework and you turn on CBC, and he had a show called Eclectic Circus. And he was a character from Belleville, Ontario, and this was the most amazing melange of music. From like Gregorian chant to kind of hard rock, he did the whole thing. And his little thing was, he called himself your charming host. And to everyone out there, he would always say hello to you out there in vacuum land. And so this morning, I kind of feel like I'm here and I'm talking, of course, to you, but then I know there's people tuning in beautiful Fernie, BC. And the nicest city in all of Switzerland, Lausanne. I know there's people there. Some of my friends, au sud de France, au Montpellier, and I have some friends in London. So to all of you out there in kind of photon, electron, micro, nanotechnology land, I just wanted to give you a really warm welcome. It is amazing that we can just stand here and with off-the-shelf technology send the signal all over the world. It is absolutely amazing. So this morning I wanted us to be looking at the scripture that Albert has read. I don't want to take too much time, but here's my title. Health and Wealth Revisited. If you're in North America, at least the ideas about health and wealth are absolutely everywhere, even in the church, or maybe especially in the church. So I want to start off just with a question. This is what Albert does, so I'm trying to be like him. So, what if? What if? What if? Now, I'm not a big guy on Disney, but I haven't seen this film, but before Disney, we had Aladdin. There's all kinds of stuff. And, you know, the idea is that there's this genie in a bottle, and I remember there's a sitcom called I Dream of Jeannie. Same idea. And so, what if you could just rub this magical lamp and get one or two or three or as many promises or anything that you would ask this magical person? So, what would you do? What would you ask for? That's my question to you. So, true confessions now. Go back to my same years in high school. my buddies and I were sitting in the library. And when you're back in those days, you think that you basically own the world and your whole future's ahead of you and you're going to kind of take over the world. And our idea was we were going to buy an executive jet. And we were going to park it in some airport somewhere and live on the jet. And then at any time just kind of jet off into the world at Hawaii or Fiji or the south of France. We were just going to, that was our hedonistic kind of view of the future. Well, that idea never really worked out for any of us. And of course, cars were quite a big thing. I don't know how these cars, but all of the nice ones seem to be red. This one here was taken actually right in Lisa. So some people actually are experiencing that dream. In today's age, of course, carbon's not a great thing, and maybe one of these electric cars, you might, like, I'm not a great car person now. So you might be able to get me convinced when I get into glory that maybe this would be the car for me. But right now, I'm a cyclist. And I'm getting older, and maybe the hills are a bit too much, so maybe one of these nice carbon fiber electric bikes. I might ask Jamie for that. Another addiction I have is science. And I remember at university talking to, I don't know if you know him, Lawrence Krauss. He's quite a famous internet physics personality now, one of the kind of the new atheists. We were dreaming if we could be the youngest person ever to win the Nobel Prize. Fame was huge. If we could kind of do something special. I don't know if you know, just 2 years ago, Donna Strickland from Guelph, Ontario, she won the Nobel Prize in Physics. Amazing accomplishment. Of course, when you meet her, very ordinary. She could be your mother. But amazing physicist. So, true enough, never actually got close to the Nobel Prize. One last little kind of addiction with fame, for me at least, is at a young age I kind of became addicted to sport. I was always average in sport, but following sport. There's a show called The Wide World of Sports on every Saturday morning. And you just get beautiful highlights of sports. I mean, now we do sports all the time. But I remember the first time I watched the Olympics. I was in Montreal. Actually, I only tuned in for the very final day of the Olympics in Tokyo, Japan. And there's a man there, Abibi Bikila. There he is, in Tokyo. The very last event in the Olympics is always a marathon. And there he was. And he actually ran into the stadium half a minute before anyone else, crossed the finish line, and started to do some calisthenics. The skinniest guy of all. Then I read about him, and he actually had won the same event 4 years before in Rome. And he ran the marathon in Rome on bare feet. He was a guard in the army of Haile Selassie, who was the emperor at that time of Ethiopia. And so I got this kind of dream. What if I could actually be the guy in Montreal? So the Olympics came to Canada in '76. Now we had a guy, Jerome Draper. He was an amazing marathoner. He had won the Boston Marathon. He won the Fukuoka Marathon in Japan, a very big one, 3 times. And we all had great hopes for him. Now, sadly, on the day of the event, he wasn't feeling very well and he didn't finish it. But I always just thought, wouldn't it be a great hero thing if I could actually, in Canada, run into the stadium on the last day of the Olympics as winning the marathon. That was kind of, for me, a big thing. So hope you've been rehearsing in your mind these things. So the question is, doesn't Jesus' promise seem to be that he is our personal genie? After all, here's what he says. ask, seek, knock. Okay? Just do those things, and he says, will be given, will find, will be open. And it's universal. Everyone. Everyone who asks receives. One who seeks finds. The guy who knocks, the door's going to be open. So, there are many people in our world, mostly in North America, but I've heard, talking to Trevor C., there are people on the African continent who have done very well. The idea is that God, the creator of the universe, wants for you to have health and wealth. And he promises it. All you have to do is ask. In faith. God wants you to be prosperous. If you have that little bit of faith, just a seed of faith, then you throw it out there, and God's going to bring a huge harvest to you. Or, as we used to say, you just name it. Whatever it is, a wife, a house, a job, fame, an airplane. God wants you to prosper because it's going to be great for his name. That's out there. And I guess it's partially based on what we've just read. So here is one of the early founders of this kind of movement, William Kenyon, who was a Baptist pastor in the northeast of the United States, and he basically just had this idea that if you can get your mind in the right phase with God's will and right thinking, then God would bless you with everything which is according to his will. Here are some modern apostles of this gospel. I love the irony. This guy's name is Prefo Dollar. And he's got a lot of money. The largest church in North America is run by this guy here, Joel Osteen, and about 40,000 people. And part of his message is that God wants you to be healthy and beautiful and prosperous, and look at me and look at my wife, and you too can have all of the greatness and good lifestyle that God wants you to have. Another fellow, Kenneth Copeland. So I'm just naming these people because this is what they teach. And so I'm putting that question out there. Is this what Jesus is promising here? It seems to be that, right? And if you read the gospel, and if you read the Bible, perhaps you believe this. There may be people in our congregation who believe that. Well, ask the question. Not what you want, not what a genie would actually give you, or what you'd love to have, but is this indeed? Remember, ask, seek, and knock. Everyone is going to be given, is going to have the door open. So, the answer to that question is no. It's not. So the gospel of health and wealth and prosperity is, in my opinion, pretty sure of this. It is a false gospel. And there's some pretty serious words from the apostles about those who speak and preach a false gospel. And how do we know it's false? I think it's pretty easy. Anyone who reads the whole Bible, or just read the New Testament, just read the Gospels, it's pretty sure that this gospel is absolutely false. When the prophets had God's mind and God's will, and they were talking about the fact that the Messiah was going to come, and of course we always want the hero to come, we want the champion, we want someone to be strong and mighty and beautiful and rich and powerful. But when God's prophet spoke, they talked about the suffering servant, who of course was Jesus. And here's the characteristics of him, foretold by the prophets. He's despised, rejected. He was actually a man of sorrows. He knew about weeping. He knew about the gutter. He knew about the dirt of society. He was acquainted with grief. Men didn't want to actually see him, his face. And so they despised him. And no one really thought of him as anything great. When he showed up on the earth, he made it very clear. He said, the Son of Man must suffer many, many things. And he's going to be rejected. So he's just actually saying what the prophet said about him. And moreover, he was going to be killed. And then his big thing, of course, was that he was going to be raised again from the dead. His followers, the apostles, who actually knew a lot more about him than we do, and whose writings we can read and see whether or not the health and wealth gospel is correct. This is the Apostle Paul, who actually met Jesus face to face on the road. And here's his testimony when people were kind of saying to him that he was maybe mighty and powerful, and he was actually making money by the gospel. Just read through this stuff. Here's a summary of Paul's life as a follower of Jesus. Stoned, shipwrecked, adrift at sea, always moving around, in danger of the rivers, in danger to be robbed, danger of people who were his own culture, danger from the Gentiles, danger in the cities, danger out in the bush, danger at sea, danger from false teachers, working hard, really hard, losing sleep, hungry, thirsty, no food, no shelter. That's the health and wealth of the Apostle Paul. And he says, if I'm going to boast anything, it's I'm a pretty weak guy. And that's really the essence of who I am. I'm a weak person, and Jesus is doing something through me. When he spoke to the Romans, which at that point was the height of civilization, he said to them, if you're going to be followers of Jesus, if you're going to be in his heritage, well, you're going to suffer with him. Your life is going to be characterized by suffering. It's not just going to be helping in order that you be glorified. So in the same way that Jesus suffered, you will suffer. This is my best little encapsulation of the Apostle Paul. The greatest follower of Jesus. The most influential follower of Jesus. Probably the most gifted follower of Jesus. Whose writings are still resonating all around the world by all kinds of people from all stripes. Here he is. At the end of his life. He's in a cold, damp prison cell. By himself. Most of his friends have deserted him. And he's got a few friends, and he's on death row. Death row. No prayer, no prison bar is going to burst out. No. He says, could you bring to me some warm clothes? And because he was a scholarly nerd, I left my books, I left my parchment back. If you could bring me some books, that would be good. And then there's a guy who's on his case, Alexander. He's a guy that created a lot of harm for Paul. So, in a word, our life, the life of Christ, is characterized by the cross. A place of execution, a place where you're despised, a place where you're accused, a place where you die. So, the gospel of Jesus Christ is anything but a gospel of health and wealth. I think it's obvious, should be obvious to any of those preachers, that if you're going to characterize the life of a follower of Jesus, it's the cross. It's a life of denial. It's a life of putting your own will to the side. It's a life of suffering at times. So, how then do we read this? Well, like anything else you read, it's good to read it in its context. We've been reading through Jesus' teaching for several weeks now. And I go back to the beginning. Matt Wilkes was here, speaking to us. Jesus begins his message to his people. And he says this, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, theirs is the kingdom. Blessed are those who are mourning, they'll be comforted. Blessed are those who are meek, they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, they will be satisfied." So the key to the whole teaching is this here. Those, if you want to get an understanding of who he's talking to, of who the promises are for, these are them. These are them. And let's see how that works. How is it that we are going to be sufficient for his teaching? If you've been here, you've heard it. You think you're okay because you don't murder people. Well, anyone you hate, you may as well murder the person. Anyone that you call an idiot, or a fool, or a gangster, or stupid, you may as well be condemned to hell. You may be thinking that you're okay because you don't commit adultery. You know, you're a fine, outstanding citizen, and you had one wife, and Jesus says, every time that you've looked at another woman lustfully, you've committed adultery. You may think, well, I'm a good guy, we're a good family, we love our neighbors, we volunteer at school, and we take care of our own kids and our neighbors' kids, and we coach. Jesus says, you think if you love your neighbor, that's going to help you out. Well, you have to love your enemy. You have to go and love the person who is unlovable. We learned last week that if you judge someone else, you may be fine because you think that you're not going to be judged, but when you judge someone else, God's going to judge you. So, the idea here is that we can't do this stuff. There's no way. If we can't live up to our own standards and man's standards, we will never, ever, ever live up to God's standards. So, where do we find that? How is it then, if you are a follower of Jesus, or you want to be, and there's no way that you can live up to the standard, how then do you live your life? Who is he speaking to? Well, he says, to those such as who are in need of help, to those who are poor, to those who are beaten down, to those who are humble, to those who don't know how they are ever going to be like he wants us to be. He says, ask, seek, knock. If we are able to realize that our need is way greater than we think it is, to use the biblical language, if we are able to admit that we are sinners, simply said, that we have transgressed laws that we know are wrong, we've made a lot of mistakes, and we have to own them. It's not that we're entirely bad, because he uses the analogy of fathers who give good things. Like when their kid asks for a loaf of bread, they don't give him a stone. When he asks for a fish, they don't give him a serpent. So he says, you've got to realize that you're in great need. Then, I think he's saying, persist, persist, persist. There have been a few times in the life of our family, and some of you know because you were there, where it was clear that we were sinners, it was clear we were helpless, and it was clear that the only thing we could do was pray. 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 son was dying. People were around his bed. People had prayed for a miracle. People were praying, there were tears. We were calling out to God to save us. I think one of my faults is as follows. I've been a believer for at least 40 years, and I've prayed a lot for stuff. Pain issues, certainly physical pain, relationship issues, bad habits that I have, addictions that I have that have created very bad relationships, broken relationships with my kids, and people who were distant from God who you hope weren't distant from God. And you pray hard, you pray long, and then you give up. You just stop praying because, well, you believe God's sovereign, or you just think God knows all about that because we've already dealt with that 15 years ago for 15 years straight, and so you stop. That's not the idea. Jesus is saying to us, ask, seek, and knock. When I was really young, maybe this happened to you as well. There's a thing called nightmares that you used to get. Don't think you get them anymore, especially when you had a fever. You have these weird hallucinations, and you thought you saw genies and monsters in your room. So what I used to do is I'd go and I'd try to find my mom. Because I knew she'd help me out, she was warm, and if I could ever just go and lie down beside my mom, everything would be okay. So I'd call out first, Mom, Mom! She came a few times, but not very often. So I got up enough nerve, and I was feeling sick, or whatever it was. I'd go up the room, and I knew where her door was. We were on a split level of Gilwood, and my brother and I lived in this room, and the other two brothers lived over there, and my parents lived just down the hall. And I'd go and I would actually find her. And sometimes the door was locked. Sometimes. So I just knocked. Usually I could just go right in. And I think that's the idea. Asking, seeking, knocking. And here's what Jesus is saying. And he's just arguing from the fact that you yourselves are evil. If you who are evil can do good things sometimes, think how much more. It's the argument from, if you know how to do arithmetic, then the math professor, for sure, he can do calculus. He can do way more than arithmetic. So I think we have to realize, again, that we are really broken. Jesus says we're evil. It's part of us that needs a lot of help because we can't do it on our own. If we can realize that God is our Father. One of the most stunning things that I thought about recently is just, why is it we all have this kind of image of the Father hard-brained into us? Whether or not we have a father, whether or not our fathers are good or bad, most people I know, at least men, have had huge struggles with their dads. But there's this thing about what a dad should be. God is our Father. And his intent for us is good. The next section is what we call the Golden Rule. And it kind of follows so. And the so might be, if God is going to give you all these good things to help you be the kind of believer that he wants you to be, if he's going to see you in your brokenness and give you the ability to be gracious with other people as he's been gracious to you, he sets out a little simple rule for us. And it is simple. Can you imagine how you would like someone else to treat you? Or can you remember when someone did something to you that of kindness and love that just made your day, or has never gone away, then if you know about that action, then you should go out and do it yourself. Now the golden rule in other places, you find it, but it's like this. You don't want someone to break in and steal stuff in your house. So you don't do the same. Don't go out and break in and steal. You don't want someone to gossip about you, so you don't gossip about it. This is different. This is actually go out there and do something. I remember when I was in high school and I was grade 9, let's say, and I wasn't very cool at all. And there were other guys that were way cooler than me. And I remember being quite lonely and going home one night after doing whatever gymnastics, whatever I was doing. And I was here, and this cool couple was over here, you know, Betty, Bob Coed were over here, and I was here, and, you know, we're just getting our books, and I mean, I noticed them, and they just went away. Normal. And after about 15 seconds or half a minute, they came back and said, "Good night, Russ." That's all they said. And they went away. And that just stuck with me. They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to, but they knew my name. And they had just a little bit of kind of whatever. They just wanted to acknowledge that I was there and a little bit of kindness. So that's what Jesus is asking. And I just know from experience that if we don't take action ourselves, if you wait for someone else to do good to you, you may be waiting a long time. And if you want a summary of what it means, what's the Old Testament all about, there it is. All of that big book with all of its confusing stuff and names and rules and regulations, summarize it, at least in loving your neighbor, in that one way. The things that you like other people to do to you. And you know what goes on. And it's usually kindness and forgiveness and love. You go out and do the same to them. Make the call, bake the thing, fix whatever. That's a summary of the whole law and prophets. In closing, we come to the last bit of this portion, which is, I think, simple. The imagery is very simple. The message is very tough. It's not my message. It's the message of Jesus. It's very tough. This is in our literature. This is the idea faced all the time. We've got choices. Which way should I go? Where do I go to school? Who do I marry? What job do I take? You know, I'm in trouble. Where do I go? Jesus uses the same illustration, and he just thinks about these two paths. And it's things that are active. He says you're going to enter one or the other. You're not going to stay stable. You are moving, and you're going to be going in one of two directions. And as he describes them, you know, this is figurative, this is poetic. One of them is narrow. One of them is a turnstile. One of them is a narrow, twisty road. The other one is 407. It's big. You get a toll, and then you just go as fast as you can, for as long as you want. And he says that one of them is hard. It's not easy. It might be dark. It might be thorns. It might be very steep. The other one is easy. Beautiful. You know, if you've ever gone hiking or canoeing, and you know that some paths are so easy. Other ones are tough. You spend half of your day portaging. Half your day. And you spend 90% of your energy. Whereas you get on this nice river or lake, it's just fantastic. You put up a sail. One of them leads to destruction. One leads to life. I mean, this image is just powerful. Our kids, we teach it to our kids. We need to teach it to ourselves. And he uses this idea that, and it makes sense, a big pathway, lots of bandwidth, free, a lot of people are going to be on that road. The narrow road, the hard road, there's not going to be a lot of people on that. In closing, I'm calling this the great challenge. The great challenge he's given to all of us. In our world, we have a lot of options, a lot of choices. Food store, education, everything. There's just what you're going to watch on TV. It's overwhelming. Jesus is saying, here's something where there's only one choice. There's only A or B. A or non-A. There's nothing else. It's kind of before you. In our world, it's okay to sit on the fence, right? It's okay to be indifferent, to be agnostic. You're not sure, you're uncertain, I'm not really too sure, I'm not religious, you know, there's good things in all religions. It's okay to put stuff off. I'm just not there right now. I respect you, I respect what you say, it sounds true, but I'm just not there right now. You know, my family and I, we're just not ready for that yet. Jesus says that we are making an active choice. You have to make an active choice. You must pass go. You've come to this brink, you've heard me teach. You must make a decision. Active. You can't be passive. We are, by nature, just watch what's going on at the food stores. Everyone is buying up toilet paper and bananas, and that's what we're all doing. It's uncanny to me. People don't think logically or look at the nutritional value of pasta. They just go and buy it. Flour, they don't bake it, they just go and buy flour. So we go with the crowd. It's just who we are. The mob mentality is part of humans. We're tribal. We follow the tribe. Jesus warns against that. He warns against going the direction that most people are going. Just blindly following it. He says it leads to destruction. Or as the old preacher, when I was first saved, at the Central Gospel Hall, he said, well, you know, Russell, Noah went into the ark as a minority, but he came out as a majority. That was his little illustration of like the ark being this thing about being saved. We don't like anymore black and white. We don't like it. And I understand that. Any position, you can have people arguing on the left, the middle, and the right, arguing with intelligence and with research. We prefer that morality is relative. We prefer that we keep our minds open. Some things in following Jesus, we have to jettison all those views of the world. He calls us to trip in this matter of following him. There are no options. And of course, we don't want pain. We don't want the hard choice. And Jesus says to us, if you're going to get life, you're going to go through this narrow road. Remember, he also says that my yoke is easy, my burden is light. And I don't want you to get the idea that in heaven there's not going to be anyone, just maybe you and me, and maybe not even you. I know that God has to get that idea. But he's making a point that in societies, most people are doing the wrong thing. Because when you read the book of Revelation, he's talking about the final supper. He says there's a huge number that no man could ever number. So it's going to be amazing. Remember, I'm waiting for the Russian choir guys to come on board to hear the voices. That's one thing I'm waiting for. Not so much my electric car, but I'm waiting for that. And so I'm going to just invite you, all of you who are listening, to consider the challenge that Jesus is laying out for us. To consider asking, seeking, and knocking. Not for that stuff, not for the secular stuff, but for the stuff that leads to eternal life. Following Jesus, knowing that you're broken, knowing that he knows where you're at, and just going to invite you to come to Jesus, follow him, believe in him, trust in him. Just start on that road. It won't be easy, but it is life. It is life. You ask any other pilgrim who's been on that road and has suffered bruises, and they'll tell you it's life. And it's much better than anything else the world has to offer.